Hi guys, I'm Tara Lipinski,
And this is Todd Kapistashi.
and you're listening to Unexpecting.
Should we do something where from now on, when you say the name of the podcast, we try to do it in unison? Don't you and Johnny do that?
Johnny and I do everything in unison. We, without trying though.
Try it one more time.
Okay. Hi guys, this is Tara Lipinski.
This is Todd Kapistashi.
and you're listening to
your cadence.
See, okay, I need Johnny here. Johnny knows exactly that it would be like, and you're listening to Unexpecting, and we kind of do that together.
But the right inflection would be, and you're listening to Unexpecting the podcast.
Yeah, no, I feel like...
Try one more time.
No, we're not trying.
One more time.
Watch me. That's like you in the pool. Todd does this thing where when we're like...
I'm really good at handstands in the pool.
No, I'm not kidding, guys. Like, we will be in a nice hotel somewhere in the pool, and he's yelling at me from inside the pool saying, watch me, like as a joke of like, you know, when kids are like, watch me, mom. And he'll just keep saying that. Watch me, look at me. What do you say? Look at this, watch me. And then he does a handstand.
You can't bring me anywhere. We were
can't.
Literally at like one of the nicest hotels in the world, and where were we? Terramina, it's the White Lotus Hotel, and I'm doing like weird handstands in the middle, and all these people
watch me.
What is this guy doing? Is he
was
okay?
He okay? Oh my goodness, I know. All right, so what can we catch people up on? Well, I think
How was Nationals? Not Nationals.
Skate
Jumping
America.
ahead. Skate America.
It was good. I went to Skate America, and it was in Dallas. We were there last year, which was really interesting because it was right when...
Hotbed of figure skating, Dallas and Texas.
Well, actually, there's a lot of skaters from Dallas. But
really?
Yeah, I mean, they come from all over.
Isn't there a rink there that's
there's
like
a rink,
decent?
yeah. People like, there's good coaches and good training. And now even Texas, because I grew up, or Houston, when I grew up, the only place I could skate was the Galleria Mall, which if you're a Texan, you know the Galleria. Have you ever been to the Galleria?
No.
It's beautiful.
But you said that was like the rink where like coaches would go and coach kids. Is that
well,
right?
Yeah.
Like
well, at this
rink?
point in the the 90s, late 90s, there was another rink that actually was built in like very close to me in Sugar Land, which was crazy. It was like a 10-minute drive. But before that, there was one called Sharpstown, which was like decrepit. It was like on its last like blade, if you will. But it was so
on its last blade. Is that a famous idiom?
Is it? No, but you know, like on its last foot.
On its last leg.
Leg.
Is the saying.
Guys, it's early here. You guys making
On its last blade? No, that's creative. I like it.
Do you like it? Okay. Maybe I'll bring it into my commentary.
I think this podcast is on its last blade.
Okay, so anyways, it was just this like really crappy rink, which I feel bad if anyone's like connected to Sharpstown, but it was. And then
but is it still
had
there?
Like hills. I remember it had like the ice was, it felt
hills.
like, yes. It was not flat and even. It had hills. But anyway, I skated in the Galleria, which I liked much better because it was warmer. But it was a small rink in the middle of this beautiful mall where people would just like be shopping and watching you train.
So weird.
Yes. And it was like right near the food court. So like I think it was like a Cinnabon. So like the smell like brings me right back of all of these like restaurants that I was like skating by.
It's not weird if it's like little kids who like aren't very good, like trying to learn skating, and it's like this fun casual thing. When it gets weird and like actually very interesting is if like you're going to like nationals, but you're training at a mall.
There were a few
but you
kids.
didn't really train there.
Yeah, I mean, for a while I did, and then I had to leave because also in December they'd put a giant Christmas tree that would like go up like
But
7.
Wait, what ages were you there training?
I was there from 9 to 11, and then
So
I would
still
go
pretty early,
to.
I guess, yeah.
I would still go to where we left, University of Delaware. So I would go back and train there sometimes. But in the summers, I trained. And when we first moved to Texas, we just tried
So you'd have
training
to train
there.
around the like Rockefeller tree?
Yeah. Yes, I would it would be a hole in my program. And I would just do all the choreography to like stuck to one side and then try to race around the back of the tree. And yeah, it was crazy. And I would have to skate sometimes to get, because they would have all these public sessions. I would have to start at 3:30. So I would skate from 3:30 to 9. That's when I was still going to in-person school.
Right when all the kids were getting out of school and going to Hot Topic and
No,
Sbarro.
no. In the morning.
Oh, 3:30 in the morning.
Did we not talk about this? Guys, this is
probably
interesting.
have.
But yeah.
So many skating stories
10
they
years
all
together.
get.
No, 3:30 in the morning. And then 9, and I would go to school like an hour late. But anyways.
You know, another story we never talked about on the podcast that I find just fun about life is that you came when you were kind of like choosing coaches, I guess, or like where you wanted to train. You came to Cleveland to Winterhurst, which is like very close to where I grew up. So like there was a world in which, well, you definitely like came to Cleveland and visited there. And I was like down the street, middle school Todd. Who knows if we could have overlapped at McDonald's.
How far was that from you?
Kind of far, but because I lived on the east side of Cleveland and Winterhurst is on the west side. But it's right, it's literally right where my parents live now. And my cousins grew up in Lakewood where that rink is. So if you would have trained there, who knows? We could have gotten married much earlier.
We could have been high school sweethearts. We almost went there because there was an amazing coach there, Carol Heiss Jenkins, and I loved her. And I tried out with 3 different coaches at the time. And also I had a friend there that I knew from skating internationals. And I thought, oh, maybe we'll go here. But then I went to Detroit and I loved the rinks. The rinks were
the city of Detroit so much. You couldn't leave.
I loved those rinks so much. Okay. That's a lot of skating. Where was I going with this?
Skate America.
Skate America. So it was good. I brought Georgie and it was that's what I was going to say. It was interesting because last year we were in the same place. Which is, not the norm. We usually go to different places, but we had a repeat this year. But last year, Georgie was 3 weeks old when we went. Well, you didn't go, but I went for it was like 2.5 days. But it was just really interesting because last year, Georgie was, a little bitty baby. And then this year, it felt like so much has happened.
Now she's running around the arena.
Yeah, now she's running around the arena. So it was good. And while I was there, a surrogate update, it's interesting we're doing this. Like, we have this podcast together about infertility, and you probably end it here with your podcast on infertility.
What do you mean?
Well, are you really listening in your spare time to other infertility podcasts?
I'm listening to you.
Right.
Tell me about it.
Tell you about it. But I also follow Whitney Port. I don't know if you remember her. Like, she's going through, we're really jumping topics. I'll get back to the surrogate update. But
what was the show? Laguna Beach? Is that what she was on?
No, The Hills, right?
But that's the same universe,
isn't it? You watched those, by the way.
I never watched
them.
Laguna Beach. I did, sadly, embarrassingly, watch like The Hills for a few seasons, but I was like right out of college, maybe. Yeah, I watched a couple seasons of that.
Okay.
What's the worst TV show you've ever watched?
We're really jumping. Go on.
Like that you're most embarrassed about.
Worst. Goodness. I'm not embarrassed about it, but I loved, like, back in the day, this is going to age me, but America's Next Top Model, I religiously.
That's not that bad of a show. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I feel like it's just like if we were to go back and watch that now, though, I just think it would be maybe not. You know what I mean? I feel like back then, like, things were flying that would not fly now.
Yeah. Some of the critiques were probably not.
Appropriate. But I love that show.
I'm not embarrassed of this. I actually give myself a pat on the back. It shows what an evolved man I am as a sports fan kind of guy. I loved watching what's the show where they like would make clothes?
Oh, Project Runway.
Yeah, I watched that. I really liked it.
Interesting.
Because it was like
Project Runway.
Because you know what's interesting about it's like any field where you actually get to see people who are like unknown, but like have a very creative or have a crazy creative talent. And then to see them try it like in front of cameras and then either succeed or fail. Like it could have been anything. It could have been, but making clothes and fashion is like interesting to see how people's brains work.
Yeah.
So like it could have been, something else they were making.
Todd's
and I would have
favorite
watched.
shows in history are Hills
What's his name?
and Project Runway.
James?
Yeah, Gunn. Tim Gunn.
Tim Gunn.
Gunn. I actually watched Project Runway too.
And you liked it, right?
I liked it. Yeah, it was good.
Anyway, back to Whitney Port.
Wait, okay. So I think we should listen to this. I would love to listen to podcasts. This is a constant thing I keep bringing up for years.
She brings this up for years because we had one great experience.
We had a great experience
where we listened to Serial
in bed.
and she loved it so much. And
It
it
was
was
so
10 years
fun.
ago. She still talks about, why can't we listen to podcasts in bed? It was so fun.
And you just refuse to do it. But I think it would be fun to do that.
I feel like I've tried. I listen to, we are really jumping around. But if anyone wants to listen to a 10-year-old podcast, you wouldn't listen to it with me for some reason. One of the best pieces of content I feel like I've consumed in the last 10 years is a podcast called Shit Town. It's like the follow-up kind of to Serial. It's like
I think we tried it
NPR.
together, right?
Serial's NPR, right?
I don't know.
It's a guy. It's a different reporter. It's not the same woman who did Serial, but God, it's so good. It's a crazy story about this guy in Alabama or Oklahoma, and he ends up being gay and
We did
so
watch,
good.
yeah, but we did listen to this together. But I still think we should bring in. Someone had a good idea the other day about a podcast that I thought you would be interested in, and I didn't take a note of it to see if it would finally push you over the edge to do it one night. But I really love their podcast. She does it with her husband. They have a really cute relationship, and it's different. I mean, we're pretty open here, but
Who started their podcast first? Did we rip off their idea?
No, they've been doing this podcast for
so we stole their idea.
years, but not about infertility. It was about, I think, her pregnancy, because she had, her first pregnancy she talked about, and then, I don't know, they just have continued it. But their relationship is really, I don't know, it's cute, but they really open up about fights they have and things like that. So it's really interesting to listen to. But they're also, I mean, you know this from me telling you, but she's gone through, the last few years, miscarriages and IVF failures and retrievals.
But they have a kid already?
They have a kid. And then they're, hoping for a second, and they're moving on to surrogacy now too. So they're sort of following the same path as we are. And I don't know exactly where they are in the process, but it's kind of, again, it's anyone who's talking about these things makes you feel less alone. So when I was listening to this the other day, it just calmed me, because I was we could be in, I don't know if they where exactly they are in the surrogacy process. But anyways, we should listen to their podcast. But
this is a side note, another one.
Oh, I was just going to get back to our original point.
I'm looking over your shoulder. The camera's not going to be able to see it. There's a completely dead orange tree. What happened to that tree?
It's a lemon tree.
Those are lemons? They're shriveled orange things.
Yes, I cannot keep.
You struggle keeping plants alive.
Cannot keep a plant alive.
We have a few plants that are.
Yeah, we had to take one out of the house and see if outside it would do better, and it's a mess.
And now a quick word from our sponsors.
As much as we'd all love to have one, there's no blueprint for navigating the challenges of infertility. While my doctors provided me with a treatment plan, I was still overwhelmed with the road ahead of us and how much Todd and I needed to discover on our own. Finding accurate information and educational materials became critical in tackling my journey. That's why I'm excited to share that this episode is brought to you by FERRING Pharmaceuticals, an organization committed to understanding the needs of patients, providers, and partners at any stage of their fertility journey. FERRING works within this community to provide offerings and promising options for all who are trying to grow their family. FERRINGfertility.com can provide the guidance you need as you navigate your journey. Whether you've just begun or you're currently undergoing treatment, there are so many helpful resources, including financial assistance programs, to help you approach your personal fertility journey. Always know you aren't in this alone. Visit FERRINGfertility.com today to access information to help you feel empowered on your fertility journey. There are some crazy stats about a woman's fertility that I think are important to talk about, like the fact that a woman's peak reproductive years are between late teens and late 20s. Some research even indicates that peak fertility among American women is age 22, with an ideal first pregnancy at age 23. Clearly, that was not my timeline, and realistically, it isn't for so many women. In my early 20s, that wasn't even on my mind for a second. I was skating and building a career and definitely not thinking about building a family. But it is important that when the time comes, you can find the right support for your journey to pregnancy. And Ritual now has more support for you than ever. You know I took their prenatal through my entire journey, but I wish I had something like their new 3-in-1 fertility support, which was designed in partnership with an OBGYN and a fertility specialist, and uses clinically studied ingredients and dosages to support conception outcomes. I took many supplements for fertility support, and I totally believe in helping your body be at its best when trying to conceive. Maybe it's the athlete in me that loves that preparation. With Ritual's 3-in-1 drink mix that tastes like refreshing lemonade and sugar-free, by the way, supports fertility across the board with ingredients like folate, NAC, CoQ10, specifically Ubixum CoQ10, which is 2.7 times more bioavailable than standard CoQ10. All of these stats and research have always made me feel comfortable, and most importantly, has built my trust in Ritual. So bring the fertility science back to your bedroom with 3-in-1 fertility support from Ritual. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/Tara. That's ritual.com/Tara for 25% off. Okay, back to our original update of our surrogate. She had we had this mix up where she went in, I don't know if we talked about it, but she went in she had like a very small polyp that needed to be removed. And she went in and they thought it was like a cervical polyp, not a uterine polyp. So that was like a month and a half ago and it kind of got us delayed. So she went in and had the actual polyp removed and supposedly everything went well. We're getting like the images sent to Dr. Beck. And now she's like just taking a month to rest before she does the mock cycle, which is just going to test her hormones to see if like everything's, still the same protocol as last time. But yeah, so we're moving along, like checking things off, and I'm counting the calendar, religiously. And I don't know, it's exciting. And I feel like too, at this point, I mean, I've been so busy this last week, but even though it's gotten a bit delayed, I feel like I'm like forming that like trust and that relationship, and whatever happens in surrogacy that I think like a lot of people don't understand, it's forming with Rachel. It's like we're teammates, we know the appointments, you're talking about when is the office going to call. It's just, I don't know. It's like a very interesting process that happens. I mean, if you want to be involved with your surrogate. But speaking of that, I saw this, I got it, sent to me a million times in a DM yesterday, but there was this video. I don't know why this made me think of this, but it makes me very upset about surrogacy and all the misconceptions with surrogacy. But it was like some woman doing a podcast about, this gay couple having, I forget where it was, like, like showing images of, their baby being born and holding their baby for the first time. And the woman is just like talking about how awful it is to see this baby being ripped from its mother's arms to, it just, I woke up to like another person sending me that this morning and we didn't even talk about it, but it enrages me, just like the misconceptions about surrogacy. And then also like what's happening in the world. If like you look at Italy and, where, imagine a world where surrogacy isn't legal and, we'd never have Georgie. And I just think anyone listening to, because that was, again, I get mostly infertility messages nowadays. It's like I should take off skater and broadcaster and it should just be, infertility.
Infertility expert.
But someone was saying they were listening to our podcast and, it helped them through IVF and made them feel better about moving to surrogacy. And I think like anyone listening who's on that bubble, and, we talked about it in the first season of everything, of how hard it was for me to really wrap my mind around, giving up on the dream. And, this is a unique process. So it's hard. And it took a lot for me to get to that point. And I thought I never would, or feel comfortable or be worried about what people thought. But really at this point, a year out, if anyone's listening and worried, I promise you, well, everyone's experience is different, so I can't promise you, but at least in my experience, a year out, I don't think about the pregnancy, you see this child with me, like the bond is, there's not even a part of me that's like, surrogacy changed my relation. It's it's just my biggest regret is that we waited this long to do surrogacy. So anyways,
Not to bring Love is Blind in a second episode or a second podcast in a row, but we watched one of the episodes, and like the best couple basically almost fell apart because the woman was so mad that the one guy was a sperm donor, which was it just well, first of all, it's a reality TV show.
We had conflicting views on this, right? Or were we on the same page?
I think we were on the same page. My view is just, again, I can't believe we're breaking down Love is Blind, but like if these were just two friends of ours and this was their reaction.
Infertility and Love is Blind recaps on Unexpecting.
Yeah. Basically, if you don't watch the show, this great couple, they like seemingly were like the best couple who was going to make it. And then it was revealed at some point that like he hadn't told her, like in the pods or even in the weeks that they had known each other, that he at some point was friends with a gay couple, I think, and just donated his sperm because they couldn't afford a donor,
right.
which is an amazing thing to do as a human being. And she was sort of like really almost like a relationship
it was like gonna be an ender
for her. Like she was so upset by it, and you could tell, and you know, people can have other opinions on this, but to me, you could tell that yes, obviously her biggest concern was like, which I agree with, like, why wouldn't you tell me that? We're talking about kids all the time, and when do you want to have kids? Like, you would think that if you're being totally honest with someone, that would have come up like, oh, hey, like I did this great thing for friends of mine. I donated my sperm. Now they have kids. Like they don't know me. They don't know who I am. Well, blah, blah, blah. Just give her that info. I think she was upset by that. But you could also just tell that she was like turned off.
I think she said something about like, oh, there's kids in the world that are
yours. And she was kind of grilling him like, do they know what you look like? And I just think that's sort of the ignorance a little bit of like sperm donation, of surrogacy, of like different ways to start families.
Right.
Like what that guy did was amazing.
Right.
Like, and he seems like such a good guy.
Right.
And for her to be grilling him, like, again, yes, he should have told her. So that's part of the sort of just being open and honest. And clearly that's telling about the relationship that he probably thought she wasn't going to react that well.
Right.
But just her reaction of like, wow, there's these, like, the kids we have aren't going to be your first kids. And do they know what you look like? And all this stuff. It just seemed like kind of ignorant of like, well, yeah, okay, maybe they do or don't know what he looks like, but he's not their dad.
Right.
And he's not raising them.
Right. And you know, you can do these open and close things. Like there's, you know, this is all legal. It's again, like surrogacy. This is all legal, that people have thought this through. And it's just like, it is. It's sometimes I think people just don't thoroughly think of the process, whether it's surrogacy or sperm or.
Yeah. But if I'm playing devil's advocate, I guess, to my own point, like there is, I guess, an argument to be made though of like, I don't know, if you met me, would you be 1% disappointed that there were biological kids out in the world?
No, I think I'd be intrigued and ask a ton of questions, but it definitely wouldn't bother me.
Like when we first met?
No. Yeah, I don't think it would bother me. Like I mean, if you didn't tell me you had kids and you had kids that were not sperm donated children, like then I'd be like, well, yeah, like why didn't you tell me you had children? Like that would be, or even the fact that like if I was, you know, we weren't young, but say I was young and I met you and, you know, that's something to think about. Like, oh, I didn't expect that I'm going to have 2 stepchildren, you know, those conversations. But no, I don't think so. What about me?
Well,
like if I donated my eggs.
Yeah, I think I'd feel the same. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like but I'm even probably more on the train of like, I just think if you raise a child, no matter if it's your biological child
like if you're
or
adopted
not,
or
it's just your kid. Like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, anyways, there was that. Speaking of controversial things, my Allure piece came out and there were some comments on there that I stopped looking. I mean, again, at this point in my career, being in the public eye for so long, I just don't look.
Well, remind people what it was about.
So it was about, well, everything that's going on politically with IVF and miscarriage and, you know, abortion. And if you're obviously, I'm sure you've heard the Amber Thurman story where she was 6 weeks pregnant and died of, I don't want to get it wrong, but I believe it was infection or sepsis or, you know, obviously one of the huge complications of waiting too long for a miscarriage. So they had approached me to just talk about, and this is just one section of this obviously bigger topic, but just talk about, I had, on paper 4 surgical abortions. And we were going through infertility. So, again, small section of the bigger picture, but without those, my health would be at risk. And I think a lot of people, and so I just talked about all of them and my story with them, and, obviously how I feel that women should have access to good medical care, just because that was the one thing I didn't have to worry about on top of everything else, like wanting so badly to have a baby and build a family. I didn't have to think about good medical care. And I knew that doctors were watching me and, I was being taken care of. And, to be honest, when I finally had those DNCs, it was such a relief, and until you are in this position where, for me, I was carrying a non-viable pregnancy and then just wanting it to be over so I could start over. But I think there's a lot of confusion because people are like, well, no, like, I think that the counter argument to what I was trying to bring light to is that most people would just say like, well, no, like if a pregnancy is non-viable, of course women are getting medical treatment. Of course they're getting abortions, but that's like actually not the case. I mean, again, why is this? Like, they're like, oh, there's no state that has these laws. But the problem is because the way things are going now and being pushed to make your fertility clinic, make your OB, whoever it is that's supposed to be taking care of you, they're now like, trying to follow these laws of like how, like for me, when I had several of my miscarriages, my gestational sac was growing. My numbers were still like going up and down, but it was non-viable. It was not viable. So like we were already planning what we were going to do. We weren't just sitting there and waiting and being like, oh, let's check again in 2 weeks. Let's check again in, 2 more weeks, and delaying these processes that need to happen for these women. And I just think, the way that the laws are going or being pushed, like there are going to be mistakes that are happening when it comes to women's health, and people are going to be trying to like cross, state lines to get medical care. And it's just very upsetting to think about. But people are very passionate about it. And I think also there was, I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure there are people that also who are going through infertility that, I never called I called it a DNC. I never called it a surgical abortion. So I think it's just such a heated.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I actually think that what the article or sort of what you wrote in Allure was good, and hopefully like more stuff comes out like this where it normalizes the idea that, and I understand if you're a religious person and have views on abortion, just hearing the word,
Right.
I feel like
I don't like
elicits
it.
a reaction.
I don't like hearing that that's what I went through.
Yeah, but I guess I think people, especially uber religious people,
Right.
like immediately when they hear that, they sort of fold up and they say no, 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 and they put their fingers up in a cross.
Right.
So I think like understanding that there's different kinds of pregnancy loss and, removing those pregnancies is a medical procedure and
Right.
it needs to be done sometimes to save lives.
Right.
Women have died trying to get that care.
Right.
So I think just having that conversation and starting to put that out there in the world to people to hear
Right.
that abortion isn't just I got drunk at a party and
Right.
got pregnant and I don't want it and I'm going to have an abortion.
Right.
It's like a lot more
And
complicated
I think
than
people
that.
think of abortion as like, well, that's not an abortion because, I think very basically someone would think like, oh, if the baby's alive, that's an abortion. But technically what I had done is, a surgical abortion, and
Yeah.
I wanted a baby really badly. And I think anyone who's going through infertility, and hears that word, it's triggering. But a DNC essentially is that, it's a surgical abortion. And I just think people need to really understand the process of what can go wrong in early pregnancy, and understand that some of these states are, on the verge or are preventing, like Amber, care that, women need. So
Also, just to clarify, the woman who goes to a party and, gets pregnant also should have a choice of what to
Right.
do with
And
their body too. I wasn't trying to disparage that.
Right.
There are a lot of accidental pregnancies.
Right.
And should be a
and everyone
woman's
has their
decision.
different views. This
Yeah.
is not, some Unexpecting is about infertility and love is blind. But, you know how I am. Whatever view that someone has, that's their own, but we definitely have ours. And I was proud of myself to be able to talk about it
that was
in
cool.
that article. So anyways, I feel like that's a wrap up for
It's a
today. Yeah, right? We
see.
went all over the place.
Sully, do you have Sullivan's walking into the room?
Yep.
You have anything else to add, Sully? Oh, we do have an infertility update.
We have an infertility update
Sully.
for Sullivan.
He's now infertile.
He is now infertile. He's crazy. And we had someone who
It's like he knows we're talking about
yeah,
him.
he's like paying attention. But we had a friend who said, we neutered him. And long story short, we did not neuter him for these 4 years because I neutered Dublin at like 6 months. And there was a doctor that said, waiting could be helpful with their hormones. And, our last dog had so many cancers. So I was just trying to, hold out. And he's not an aggressive dog, but he is just so much energy and
he's
crazy.
so
Hyper. And someone told us, it really helped him calm down. So we did it. And it's done nothing. He is maybe more hyper.
He's definitely more hungry.
He's more hungry, more hyper.
Jury's still out though.
But
he could calm down.
We
maybe.
can't have any more
But
little
he just got
Sullys.
the surgery done like 2 weeks ago. So
And we signed for him. I didn't even ask him how he felt about it.
yeah.
You had to do the sterilization thing where you have to sign and sorry, bud.
Well,
No
now
more
you-
little Sullys. All right. I love you.
love you.
Thanks for listening to Unexpecting the podcast. Please subscribe, leave a review, and follow Unexpecting Pod on Instagram for info about upcoming weekly episode releases.